Unsuccessful day of
Yeah,
thinking.
this day is not working out for everybody.
You are alive.
Okay, we are House Education Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. With sort of a lull in business with a deadline, we are taking a look at some of the bills that we could pass this year, but wouldn't be acted upon until next year. One of them being H-130, an act relating to expanding the membership and duties of the Advisory Council on Harassment, Hazing, and Bullying Prevention in Schools. We did have a presentation on this back a couple of months, but thought it'd be good to walk through with Legislative Council before we have testimony on it later today. So Beth, would you walk us through H-130?
Sure, Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. Would you like me to share my screen?
Sure. And do you,
Yes.
before we get into the bills, do you know anything about the history, the origin story of this advisory council?
I don't, but what I can do is show you where it lives, and that might give you a little context. So, okay, so we're in Title 16, our home, our legislative home, and we're in the school district's chapter. If you scroll all the way down, subchapter 5, it is the harassment, hazing, and bullying subchapter. And here is where the requirement lives for schools to have harassment, hazing, and bullying prevention policies, the definitions, the interplay with the criminal side of things. And the advisory council lives in section 570. So, let's see. This section was added originally in 2011, actually in 2012. It was amended in 2013, although this doesn't tell us what parts of this was amended. And there have been no updates since then. So I think it's safe to say that the advisory council itself has been around since at least 2013. And I can look into that to see exactly which one of these amendments, if any, touched on the council itself. But that's the extent of my background. So H-130, as introduced, is amending that section, section 570. And there's a whole bit of current law that we're not touching. And then we get to the duties of the secretary. The secretary shall develop model harassment, hazing, and bullying prevention policies and establish an advisory council. And then all of the current membership of the advisory council is struck. And this bill proposes to add new members or create new members. There's some overlap, but it's not complete. So
Before we get into membership, so it is also changing their duties.
that language you'll see later on repeated in the current, the review and coordinate school statewide activities is carried on into new language. And then I believe the report back requirement is also included. So I would say it expands their duties. So the membership, this bill is proposing that the membership be the secretary or designee. You can see well, let's just look at what the current membership is. Yeah. So it's the executive director of the Principals Association, School Board Association, Superintendent's Association, President of NEA, Executive Director of the HRC, and Executive Director of Visa. And then other members selected by the secretary, at least one of whom shall be a current secondary student who has witnessed or experienced harassment, hazing, or bullying in the school environment. So then this bill, it would be a secretary or designee, a principal appointed by the Principals Association, a school board member appointed by the School Boards Association, superintendent appointed by the Superintendent's Association, a teacher appointed by NEA, the executive director of the Human Rights Commission, the executive director of Visa, a member appointed by the Vermont Coalition for Disability Rights, student member appointed by the Education Justice Coalition of Vermont, a student member appointed by the Vermont Student Anti-Racism Network, 2 members appointed by Outright Vermont, 1 member appointed by the Commission on Women, 1 member appointed by the Office of Racial Equity, 1 member appointed by the Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, 1 member appointed by the State Athletic Directors Association, 1 member appointed by the National Association of Social Workers, and a parent member appointed by the Vermont Family Network. The duties of the council are to meet at least 4 and not more than 12 times per year. Here's that carryover language: review and coordinate statewide activities relating to the prevention of and response to harassment, hazing, and bullying. That is right here in current law. Review the model harassment, hazing, and bullying prevention policies developed by the secretary every 2 years and recommend updates as necessary. Generate and distribute resources on hazing, harassment, and bullying prevention and response to school professionals, including best practices for re-entry into and maintaining access to educational spaces, restorative practice framework for responding to hazing, harassment, and bullying issues, differentiated responses for complaints and accused students with disabilities, and annually soliciting input from students, parents, schools on hazing, harassment, and bullying. And then they are required to report to you all and your colleagues in the Senate Education Committee annually certain things, and you all are required to hold a joint legislative hearing each session to review the report. And that report has to contain details on the past year's advisory council activities and the upcoming year's priorities, a summary of solicited input from students, parents, schools on hazing, harassment, and bullying, a list of resources the agency needs to support work related to hazing, harassment, and bullying, and any recommendations for legislative changes, and then standard reimbursement for not more than 12 meetings. You'll remember they're required to meet at least 4, but not more than 12 years per year. 12 meetings per year. And then no other, just redesignating this definition as subdivision M, subsection M, sorry. And then all of these changes would take effect on July 1, 2025, should you pass the bill.
Has anybody done the math? I think I had 18.
18.
Let's say I was
What
looking
I got.
at
18. All right.
6 to 8.
Yes. All right, so the carryover language is review and coordinate school and statewide activities relating to the prevention of and response to harassment, hazing, and bullying.
Correct.
I'm not going to ask you what that means because you didn't write it and you weren't here when it was put in there. Unless you'd like to offer anything.
I'm not going to speculate. I think that's a question for actually the folks on the advisory council or the proponents of this bill as to what they think that means.
Did the advisory council have in its previous language any meeting requirements?
No.
Go ahead, Beth.
I'm going to page 5, generate and distribute resources on hazing, harassment, and bullying prevention and response to school professionals. Is that something they were doing?
I'm sorry, where are you?
Page 5 of 6, line 4.
So under new,
Generate and distribute resources. School
So
professionals.
I would say maybe,
Yeah.
because current law requires them to review and coordinate school and statewide activities relating to the prevention of and response to. So I think it's quite possible that generating and distributing resources was a part of that.
yeah, although again, resources is a vague term that we don't need to make more specific.
Right, because I also noticed that they are asking for resources. Which again, is a little vague. Where was it somewhere? Page 36, provide the advisory council with administrative support.
That's the secretary's
That's
responsibility.
the secretary's responsibility.
So, who can recall when this was presented to us by the sponsor as to the
Remember,
reason behind it? So as I recollect, they wanted to expand the membership so that it would include
more voices.
more people, more voices, and more people sort of with lived experience, as they say.
Yeah.
And expand their duties.
Yeah.
Anybody added up 12 times 18 times 50?
That's
That was
what
what I was gonna ask, whether all of them, how many would get that 50?
I think everybody's entitled to it.
Everybody's entitled, unless, there's nobody on that list who isn't entitled, is what I'm asking.
18 times
Secretary.
50 is 900.
Secretary.
900 times 12
So that's $900.
$10,800.
That's gonna be
10,000.
12 times. Well, it's $900 every time they meet.
I just wanted to make a general statement on this. I don't have any background on this at all, but when the member did come in, it did get me thinking. I really applaud the goals here. I really do. I know that we have ongoing, has ongoing challenges in with hazing, harassment and bullying. And I feel like it is our duty to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to prevent that. And I'm not, I celebrate some of the language here too, although I do think we really do need to be very specific. And so I welcome the ability to change some of the language. I haven't really spent enough time with it yet. I am concerned about 18 members. I mean, really concerned, only because there isn't, if you said to me, well, which one do you take off? Well, I wouldn't want to make the decision. I would want to work with others to make the decision on how to lower the number, because everyone on there would be a valuable member, I think.
For sure.
But I just think having a panel of that size isn't going to help necessarily to be nimble. And it is the money, that's a significant part of it, but that's not the reason why I'm saying 18 is too many.
And I remember I had a question before that I'm not sure has been answered, is why outright Vermont gets 2 members. No other group gets, every other group on here has 1 member,
Oh,
one
wow.
member, 1 member, but outright gets 2. And I'm just wondering what the reason is. I'm not saying it's necessarily a problem, I just don't know why.
And some of these organizations I haven't even heard of, the Education Justice Coalition of Vermont. The Vermont Student
I
Anti-Racism Network.
recognize all of them, but
Right. So our next step here is today, and we'll have the current chair.
Just a question.
At 2:50, we'll have the current chair of the commission, the advisory committee, advisory council, come in, where I think we'll just hear that they haven't met and haven't issued any reports in the last couple of years, but not sure.